see you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are on the air. All right. Well, welcome to the Kennebunkport Planning Board meeting for August 4th. This is our first and maybe only for a while live meeting. There was a major agenda change, which is why there are so few people here, which the Ocean Woods asked to have theirs moved so that we would not have a whole crowd of people in here. Welcome to the Delta variant around Planning Board meeting. So we're just going to have one presentation and two findings only for a while live meeting. There was a major agenda change, which is
You
why
want to do the minutes
there
first?
are so few people here. Let's do the attendance. The Ocean Woods asked to have theirs. So we have George, Larry, Nina, a crowd of people in here. So George, you're voting around, and Scott and John aren't here. And so we're just going to have one. That's the attendance. There are two sets of minutes because we have just gotten them in the last minutes. So we have the minutes. Shall we do the findings of fact first, or should we do the dates? The last two meetings of the planning board. Let's do the attendance first.
I think it was 7th and 21st.
Okay, yeah, 7th and 21st. We have George, Larry,
You wanna
vote
do
on the 7th. I think they're finished. They're voting. We have a motion on the 7th.
So I move to accept the minutes from the 7th.
I'll second that.
There are two sets of minutes, so I'm going to take, we can ask for a vote. Oh, this is cool, we don't have to do this. Anyway, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, now, the approval of minutes for the 21st. Vote on the 7th. I'll take another motion.
I move to accept the minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to take, and George, do you have a mic? Anyway,
mic.
all in favor? Why don't you move over here? Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
What?
Now,
Take your name tag.
yeah, you can move your name tag, since you're not
gonna
John.
say anything.
Anyway. Okay, why don't we just jump right into, anyway, item 3, Ocean Woods is off the agenda. So why don't we jump right into item number 4, 201-001, Boughton Hotel Corporation.
We haven't done the findings of fact.
Well, we can do that.
Okay.
Holding them.
Take
We
your
don't need
name
to hold
tag.
them around.
I can sit around.
Well, although it's going like the John, no Republic around probably. Anyway.
So Tom, you said, Tom, you said presentation,
Okay,
but
why don't we just?
this is a public meeting, isn't it?
It will be a public hearing, but first we have to hear from them if they have additional. So why don't we
Okay.
jump right into item number 4, Mr. Walsh, 201-001, Boughton Hotel Corporation.
Okay.
Is it different from what we heard last week? Well, although we like to keep our no Republic around probably.
So Tom, you said,
I don't have a,
Tom, you said
I don't
presentation,
think we
but
need it again. Oh, this is
this is a
the,
public meeting, isn't it?
it will be a public hearing, but first we have to hear from them if they have additional
Okay.
things to present.
Everybody here, obviously Bill Walsh, Walsh Engineering, John Martin, Chairman of the Board, is the managing partner of the Colony. We have Ralph Austin, who's the attorney for the project, Sean Kay, who is right behind him, and we've got Rob
Different from what we heard last week.
Murphy over there for the art class on the project. So
Okay.
that's it.
It's very nice to see you all in person.
And you as well.
Don't get used to it.
Take a picture.
You know, I think I'll turn it over to John.
Great, okay. I'm gonna try to talk maybe louder than I need to, because I always feel like I can't hear
Fine.
with the mask on. So again, John Martin from the Colony Hotel, Boughton Hotel Corporation, I'm the managing partner. As Bill had stated before, we have everything queued up so we can answer questions specifically if everyone wants to keep things moving along.
And you as
Don't
well.
get used to it.
I think we should probably
Take a
for
picture.
brief moment talk about the history of our application. I want to remind everyone that we started this 2.5 years ago when you guys accepted our development, again, John Martin from the view, and received positively with you guys, so we moved ahead with it. With the help of many of you, but also Warner, we determined that the scale was too big for one big application, so I'll remind you that we divided it into North and South Campus. So today, we're only talking about the North Campus, which would be Colony Ave, its sidewalk, and up to Fairfield Street. There's nothing on the south side of the historic property. I had an interesting thing happen this week. 2 people called me and asked if they could come and speak on our behalf in a positive way. And it reminded me that in your packet, and I just want to bring this up, there is letters of endorsement from several people around town. I think those kind of fallen by the wayside. We did that almost 2 years ago during the summer, and it was nice, sunny, often come and trying to run Maple, so I said, don't come. John Rinaldi down the street has a historic property, but I think the most important letter I always like to read is from Tom Bradford. I think that's an important note for the town's support on the project. And also, I wanted to remind everyone that we did public hearings of our own last summer and got feedback, and we actually made some changes before the application was finalized. From feedback, we did 30 last year, and I did 5 this week, because the guests are wondering why they can't make reservations for the building. Hopefully, no longer be there next year. So, I was asked to talk about parking. I think everyone has an updated parking schematic in their application. I'm happy, there it is, perfect up on the screen if anyone wants to look at it. I'm happy to go over it line by line if you'd like. I think the major thing that we wanted to make sure we included and talked about was the employees. That was brought up in one of the very first meetings because we traditionally park our employees on the south campus, but we thought we would include them in the application just to make sure that it was sort of passing the straight face test on its own. So we did allocate employee parking for the north campus. If you go to the bottom right, we'll go right to the punch line, the bottom right, we have excess parking on the proposal of 35 additional spots over and above what's required by the town for both the cafe, the Ground Market, and the guest rooms at A, B, and C and Building 2. So I'm happy to go over those with you. This is the one thing they asked me to talk about, but I can also certainly partner on if people have questions specific to parking. So I can do that now, or we can come back around. So we did allocate employee parking for the north campus.
I just have one question. You do a lot of weddings and events.
Yep.
And those 35 extra spots, if you use your big ballroom, I would think they would be occupied.
They probably will be. We also have additional parking on the south campus because the event space is on the south campus. And traditionally, a majority of the people who are at an event stay at the hotel. We have large blocks of hotel guests staying in the hotel itself, so we kind of get double use out of those parking spots.
John, can you?
I just have
sorry,
one
Mike, please.
question.
Yeah.
You do a lot of
So
weddings.
we feel like we're going to end up actually,
And those
with
35
this
extra
situation, we're ending up with more
spots,
parking
you use
spots
your
than
big
are in
ballroom,
existence
I
now,
think they
and
would
we feel that we're satisfying our parking demands for our use of additional parking on campus, north and south. We don't have people parking on Colony Ave or Ocean Ave. We have, this weekend, we had a wedding Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we fit all those cars perfectly fine into existing parking. You can see right now, we have 90 spots on that campus. We'll have 100 after the renovation. We feel like we're organized, so we're gonna actually have better parking situation than that dirt parking lot we have now, where people block each other in, and we're satisfying our parking, make it so you just can't park the way you're used to. So I think we're gonna be fine, that's my gut feeling operationally, and I do know that the numbers add up to more. We had, this weekend, we had parking questions for me.
If you have overflow, will you put them down at the Colony Beach?
Overflow parking, right now we have 90 spots on that problem yet, so we would work on that problem when we start to run into it. The only time we ever really have a parking challenge would be 4th of July, when 2,000 people sit on our lawn and watch the fireworks, but that is such an extreme, crazy experience. You know, we're not gonna design something for the 4th of July, so, but we haven't run into it yet, so we're not planning on doing that yet. We also could use the grass down in front of the Mountain House, but we've never had to do that. It's been a contingency plan for us in the past. If we really get some angry people on 4th of July, we can park them in the front there, but we didn't even include that. Only time we ever really
Isn't that resource protection?
would be 4th of July. one comes up out of sequence, I could just step back. If that's okay, I'll turn it over to Bill. So we know, we didn't even.
Isn't that resource protection?
It's the whole circle, we park them all on the circle at A.
Talk, just quickly about the traffic, I think,
No, I'm
and
thinking
you had
of
some
the
questions
lawn.
last time, and I think I want to do a better job, I guess, of trying to address those for you. And I spent a fair amount of time with Bill Gray, who's our traffic engineer, and meeting with him and talking with
If
him
one comes up out of.
about the traffic, about how that affects us. So, I'm gonna start, MDOT does traffic counts, throughout the state, and they're readily available online, you can find them, so they do them in different, and you had some questions last. The traffic counts for 2016 on Ocean Avenue, up closer to Dock Square, were about 4,000 average annual daily trips, AAD. About the traffic. It's an important thing, so it's average across the year. So they do that. So summer season, obviously, MDOT does traffic counts. In round numbers and sort of Bill's experience, you take that number and just about double it. So in the summer, you probably have about 8,000 trips on Ocean Avenue. On a daily basis. So with that, our calculations that we've gone through for the site, the way Bill presented this, and he alludes to it partly in the report. He calculated all of the trips numbers and sort of to the cafe, Bill's experience as being vehicle trips. So he didn't include any summer on-campus walking, any people in the neighborhood walking, all vehicle trips, which was a conservative approach that he took. With that, and he also, there was another thing that really wasn't accounted for in the numbers, which was pass-by. So there are, of those 8,000 trips or so that are on Ocean Avenue, maybe not that many quite on Cal, but of those trips, a certain number are already on the way, so they're already driving up and down Ocean Avenue. When you pull it, you drive by and you go, oh, hey, I want to grab a drink, you know, grab a sandwich from the drink. So both of those sort of lead to a conservative approach. Also, another pass-by trips, Bill, in the ITU manual, which is the traffic manual, for that use, 40, about somewhere between 35 and 45% are the pass-by trips. So of our total number, say we had 100, we go 45% of those, 45 of those would be pass-by trips that would total. So they're not new trips, they're not sort of destination trips, they're the pass-bys. So with that, I guess in all of that, those numbers are slightly inflated or conservative, maybe is a better way to say that, or terminology to use. So, you know, you were sort of questioning what those numbers were, and that, understandably so, when you look at them, they went from 20 to 40, they were sort of doubling these numbers. But if you start to look at it and break it down further, which in his report he obviously didn't sort of drill down that deep, it was not drilled quite that far. He's got some conservatism built in what will probably actually happen when you add in the pass-by and also the on-campus trips. Somewhere around 50% of those trips wouldn't be actual vehicle trips likely that are going to hit that market.
Bill, I think it's great that he took a conservative approach, and I want to explain my reaction. I think I certainly was misunderstanding the chart as it was presented.
Yeah.
I think we've clarified that now, that we were doubling. This conservative estimate says we will double the number of trips per hour on a busy summer day.
Exactly.
Where you started, though, is I think where I should have gone at the last meeting, which is of the 8,000 trips per day along there, how many of those do you think are due to the colony today?
Those would be in those, essentially in those numbers.
And I think what we're saying is that number, I think you're gonna find that it's not a huge percentage, whatever it is, I'd like to know what it is.
Sure,
I think you're gonna double that.
yes. Yeah.
conservatism appropriately included. But if we step back and we say of the 8,000,
Yep.
100 of them are due to the colony, or 200, or whatever that number is.
Yep.
That number's gonna double, nominally. I
Yep.
think that's what that chart was telling me in the end. I didn't have that 8,000, and I don't know what that percentage is, but I think that's kind of the way to gauge this.
Yep.
We think you're gonna update the property, it's gonna draw more people, you've done a conservative estimate,
Yep.
appropriately so.
Yep.
It's gonna double the number of trips. Even if you count the ones that are only going around the block.
Yep.
Great, it's no worse than that. How big a deal is that in terms of the 8,000 trips a day? If you can help me, feel good about that, then I think
So those
my
8,000.
concern is gone.
Yep, so those 8,000 trips are daily trips?
Yes,
So so we take that down to an hourly rate,
Yes,
it's about 800 in a peak hour.
okay, yeah.
Okay, 8,000 to 800.
And you
And
think
we're-
20 of those today are due to, or 40 of them in worst case?
Yeah, we were 30 on a peak Saturday,
So you're gonna add
and they go to
30 or
57.
40 trips to 800
Right,
in the peak hour,
right,
right?
exactly.
And
And that was my.
that's a 5% increase, I think.
No, it's 1 or 2%.
Wait, 800, you're gonna increase it, you're gonna increase it by 40. 80 would be 10%.
Yes, hold on one second.
40 would be 5%. I mean, that's my silly,
Yeah, I'm gonna say 40.
well, you're cheating. I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously, to use your calculator.
Yep.
I'm a slacker.
So we're actually, if we go with the original numbers, we're 36, let's say 36 divided by 800. Yeah, 4%, 1.5%. Yep,
That's all we're doing here. A very conservative estimate
it is. Yep,
is you're gonna add 5%
Yep.
on the peak hour of the peak season.
exactly.
Thank you. I'm good.
Good. I knew I didn't explain that last time.
No,
I
no,
wanted to circle back
I
around.
thought about it afterwards, and I thought, I didn't mean to be a jerk about it. It was just,
No, I don't
I was
think you
caught
did.
aback about, wait a minute, why are you saying this is so trivial? You're doubling.
Yeah.
But we need to think about it in terms of,
The bigger
the
picture.
colony isn't the only thing generating traffic up Ocean Ave.
Exactly, and I guess that's what I was trying to explain, was that it's not,
No.
in the world of traffic, it's not big, and that's what I was trying.
Yeah, and I think you were immersed in it, and I was
Yeah,
coming at it cold.
yep, absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
get it.
Okay,
Um,
one quick question, I
Sure.
think. You presented it, I think it's on this drawing, actually, a much nicer, improved intersection down at the South Main and Arlington. Is that intended to be part of your project, or is that just some nice thing you want to have the town do?
So I think we have some more work to talk through with Lori and Werner and Mike Claus on that. Obviously, we don't want to do it, but it does, that intersection does need some help, and that seems to be, in talking with Werner, everybody seems to recognize that it needs some attention. And our traffic engineer obviously pointed that out. So we're gonna sort of continue to talk with Lori and Werner and Mike Claus. And I've sent it to Mike to have him look at it, and his general response was, yeah, it's better, and add some gravel on the corners. So he likes it, I think better from a traffic standpoint.
Right. He'd like it even better if you agreed to do it.
I think he would, and John would like it even better. No, I think it's up there for discussion.
Okay.
Between John and John.
But is it part of this application?
Is it part of, it is not part of this application, though.
And the approval is not contingent upon it.
Right.
Well, that's what they're hoping.
Everybody hopes that it is, though.
The good citizens on South Main Street might pitch in.
Yes.
Well, you're saying we're gonna increase the traffic by 5%? It's already a marginal safety situation? We better do something.
Well,
That's right.
All right, I'm being a bit facetious there, but it
Got it.
seems like,
We know.
we're dancing around something here. How do we bring that and again, it isn't our business of who pays for it, but I think it's important, if we're going to authorize this, that we say whether or not we want that to happen. We require
Can we
that to
do that?
happen.
Well, we can say it, but it's really up to the town and Colony
The road
to
committee.
change an intersection on a town road.
Well, I think we could ask for review from the Public Works Department, or we could require an analysis to be done by the applicant that says that it's safe without it. I think right now, that's the question. Is it safe to improve this property and not address that concern, which is right now not included as part of the application?
To that point, the traffic was talking about Ocean Avenue, it's not talking about South Main Street.
So you would say that it's going up less on South Main Street?
I have no way of knowing, and living on South Main Street, and as we recently had an application down that intersection, those of us who live in that part of the town, it's gotten frightening sometimes on South Main
No,
Street.
I understand.
And
Yeah.
that intersection, everybody knows, is a
Yeah.
very difficult spot.
Right.
But I
All-
don't know that we can't make the project contingent on it, but I like the idea that we ask the road committee, or how does that work, where do we go with it?
Yeah, so I've passed the design along to all the other parties, and, and so far, I've received positive feedback in terms of, the design, and I don't think anybody disagrees that, that it's a, that it's a positive that would be a positive improvement. But, what's a little bit difficult with this situation is that your site plan review standards don't necessarily direct you, in this approach. We were looking at a subdivision application, it's a little bit of a different animal, in terms of, reviewing those types of intersections. I think the board is on the right path in terms of, asking the question, does this, does the intersection of South Main, is it so negatively affected by this project that this improvement here, rises to the level of being a required improvement?
Right, right.
I think that's the question that you have to,
It's better articulated than I did, but yes.
that you have
Yeah.
to ask, and I mean, looking at it, I would be, and I don't quite know how you parse this out, but it seems to me that the vast majority of the increase of traffic is related to the market. And so I don't know how you parse out if any of that traffic related to the market, relates in any way, shape, or form to, the intersection on South Main. I mean, if I split them out separately, so for example, if had it not been for the Colony bringing forward the market concept, if this was instead, a different property owner, would we be asking the same question? Would we be looking at the intersection of South Main because there's a mixed-use market being constructed over here on this intersection of, Ocean and Colony?
I think it's my concern is that the suppliers for the market will not exclusively use Ocean, that they will generate traffic that comes down South Main Street. I mean, that's what we see today, is that trucks, linen trucks and the like, do use South Main Street. And if this exacerbates that, then there's an argument to be made that this is diminishing the safety.
Yeah, I mean, you do have other hospitality properties back up, and through there, and so
Yeah,
I don't know that I would necessarily tag, that traffic to the Colony. But,
Fair enough.
I mean, if I'm
What he said. Yeah.
I mean, if I'm driving linen, so I'm not,
Yeah,
from the
absolutely.
Colony, I'm not
Yeah,
headed
there's several
that
other
way.
options.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm only headed that way if it's a rainy day and
So you don't,
Doc
you,
squares them.
you don't think that it is likely then to generate more commercial traffic on South Main Street?
Well, I think it's appropriate to ask for, Bill Bray to specifically answer that question, and I think that's an appropriate question to
Okay.
ask,
All right.
But, if you're asking my thoughts, and opinions on this, I'm looking at what's going to generate more traffic here. Is it going to be what's been a reduced number of additional rooms being generated, or is it the market that's generating the bulk of it? And where do we think that traffic is headed?
Right, and there's an argument to be made that it's on Ocean Ave, that market, much
Right.
closer to
That's
Ocean
right.
Ave than this intersection.
And again, I'll say if I were to pull that as a separate application and treat it,
Yeah,
I don't know that we'd be having a conversation about South Main.
we would not. Okay.
But this application is changing Colony Ave significantly.
Correct.
So it's just,
It's
it's
improving
just
the
not
sight
changing
lines.
the very end of it.
Yeah.
So. I agree, it's probably not, we need to say something, but it's probably not in our purview directly.
It's changing Colony Ave because the property is on both sides of Colony Ave.
Yep.
It's construction, but once you get off the property, it doesn't change anything unless you require it to. I mean, that is public road on both Ocean Ave and on South Main. So, I mean, if you have a property that's going in somewhere that's new, that's gonna be a hotel, are you gonna make them change the roads that already exist there further down?
Well, Nina, one of the questions that if you do the findings of fact, that you're gonna have to write is that this doesn't generate traffic or adversely affect safety in the surrounding streets and such. And
Right, and
that's really what we're getting at here.
Right, and I would have to put in there, that South Main, and whatever we find as facts about South Main. But I don't see how you can make it a change required as part of this application. You can make a recommendation, but, the planning board finds that there may be increased traffic generated there just by the nature of the increased population, and recommend that the colony work with the town to make South Main intersection safer.
And that would not, you're saying that negative finding would not, would still allow us to approve it?
Yes, because at this point, it's really not part of this application.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, I see this as kind of a separate issue.
Yeah.
That the configuration of Colony Avenue and South Main is, sort of interesting, but the decision on this project is not gonna depend on that intersection, right?
Okay.
So it might be interesting to find out what, to mention it, but I don't know I don't really know where to go with this, except just an inquiry to.
There is a change going in on Ocean Ave, and that the crosswalks are going to be different.
Yeah, but that's on Ocean, but on South
But
Main.
that's on Ocean where most of the traffic is going to
Yeah.
be generated, and that's been worked out, and you would put in there basically that the town and the applicant have worked out a change in the crosswalks to handle, an increase in traffic and an increase in pedestrian traffic as well as automobile traffic, but
So at this point, does the traffic study, is it moot on whether or not there'll be an increase or a decrease or change of any kind on South Main Street, the amount of traffic?
So we didn't do a specific directional, where the traffic goes to. That wasn't part of the analysis. It was what this is gonna generate, sort of another step in the process.
On Ocean.
Right,
We had some discussion about South Main when we were talking about construction.
yes,
And
absolutely.
I think that the reason we are having this discussion is an artifact of your suggestion that the intersection at South Main and Colony, and I think it's Arlington at that point, could be improved for the safety of all. And we all nodded our heads and thought, boy, that would be terrific. If that were not on your plans, the plans would still be perfectly acceptable because you hadn't raised that issue, and we hadn't talked about South Main Street, honestly, until we got to this point. So I don't think, my suspicion is, it's not actually part of the application.
No, we didn't.
And it's fanciful
I'm good then.
and a nice
Let's
idea.
move on.
But we can mention it
We can mention.
We can mention it.
That it'd be a really
That,
good.
boy, wouldn't it be
And
swell?
that there
Wouldn't
are
it be swell?
talks
We
that
don't-
are already
yeah.
going on, and we
We
support
did,
that.
Yes.
to your point, we did talk about construction traffic,
Mhm.
and that we are directing all of that to
Yes.
Ocean Avenue, that won't be
Right.
going towards
But
that.
when Ocean Avenue floods, it all ends up on South Main Street anyway.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
thank you, Paul.
Okay.
That's good.
I think we can, the other one item, I guess I probably wanna point out was schedule, and we talked about this a little bit last time. What we intend to do in the summer months is only sort of, I'll call it light duty work at the colony. So it's gonna be sort of indoor work, it's not gonna be noise producing, it's not gonna be heavy equipment, it's not gonna be nail guns outside, it's gonna be work inside the building that keeps the noise down. So I just wanted to clarify that one as well. That's obviously best for John and his guests and all of that, so he's gonna manage that as that,
That's good.
as that goes forward. But I think with that, we're still, we still have our stormwater permit that's being reviewed through the DEP. We expect that shortly, haven't heard anything back from them, which is a good sign. I don't think we're gonna have any real issues with that. The reality is we're treating, DEP required us to submit a permit to treat 589 square feet of impervious area on this site. So we really, it was a technicality in the regulations that sort of required us to do that. So, we're treating almost an acre of impervious, so I don't see that as being any sort of an issue whatsoever with DEP. Should be pretty straightforward. With that,
Could I go back and just clarify something? The sidewalks on Ocean Ave, the town has approved and will make those changes, or are you making those changes?
on Colony Ave, maybe? Or
I'm sorry, on Ocean Ave. I meant Ocean.
Yeah, that's part of our project.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll be doing those in the crosswalk.
okay.
So you'll be making those changes on behalf of the town? So you got authorization from Public
We got
Works,
from the
whatever?
selectmen,
From the
so
selectmen.
We were in front of the selectmen for
Okay.
sidewalks
All
on
right,
Colony and
okay,
also,
great, thank you.
Just quickly, the selectmen review the plans and agreed in concept with what we're doing. You can't have a formal signed agreement with them until the planning board, if it does approve, until the planning board approves it, then the selectmen would incorporate those plans into a written agreement that would get recorded in the registry.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, do we have any other questions from the board at this point? Okay, so I guess I can open up the public hearing on this, so, I haven't done one of these in a long time. If there's someone in the public would like to ask a question or make a comment, please go up to the mic and do so. Don't crowd don't crowd each other, just, okay. Please. And identify yourself, please.
Kelly Cox, and I'm at 63 South Main. And I was just curious, I'm the property that's directly across from Fairfield that goes down to the corner. And I was just wondering, what are the plans for the edge of Fairfield Creek? I do see a walkway in the plan. Is there fencing? Is it just going to be open and natural?
Yeah, it's gonna be very natural. There is a pathway that, I don't know if I can, get out the window. So there will be a pathway that runs down here, and this is just a walkway, sort of a nature walk that's gonna run down along the edge, and it ties in down here with this section. This area, the majority of that slope, just as steep as it is gonna maintain sort of a natural look to it. There may be some trees are a little iffy, if you will, right now, so those will be cut. Stumps will remain. There may be some plantings underneath there to help in that bank stabilization, making sure that doesn't go anywhere. So it's gonna, we're very much trying to just maintain that sort of natural look that exists today.
Do you anticipate a lot of foot traffic on that pathway?
I guess I would turn it back to the people that lived in that neighborhood and say, John, you know better.
Well, I mean, I look at what's, I look at, so we don't know is the answer. There's no way to do an analysis on that, but when I sit out in front of the hotel and watch people walk their dogs, I think people are going to start using that as a way to walk their dogs. If they were gonna go down to Ocean Avenue and take a right, they might go along the water instead. I don't know that we said this or not, but those paths are gonna be, if you've walked on the land trust lands at all, they're gonna be pervious, they're not gonna be paved. There are a couple locations that we're gonna work with the town on. Safety-wise, we might have a minimal barrier for someone not to fall off the edge, but whenever possible, they've got the clearance and there's gonna be plantings, it's just gonna be an open walkway. But we really don't know how many people are gonna walk on there, and we intentionally, can I get your finger on this? If you look up here, right here, you'll see the path goes through the buildings A, B, and C here and here. And that was very intentional because what we didn't want to have happen, and this has happened to me personally, is I've gotten on a walking trail and say, oh shoot, I gotta go to dinner, and I don't know how to get out of there. Do I go further? Do I turn back? I know this isn't very long, but we wanted to give people a way to get off the trail if they wanted to. So we're anticipating probably more use from people who are not wanting to walk on Colony Ave, but now that we got authorization to put the sidewalk in, I think we're gonna keep people walking on Colony Ave also. We've all seen people walking along, they're kind of in the road, they're not on that shoulder. We're hoping that we'll see more appropriate walking on the sidewalk instead of in the road on Colony. So it's gonna be hard to say. It also will only be dawn to dusk. We're not having people out there at night. There'll be signage saying that. So this is not gonna be a thing where people are gonna be out there racing around at night. That's not
No
gonna be.
lighted paths?
There'll be small, safety lighting at the intersections, low lighting came down, and we've got the lighting team working on that also. So,
We didn't think about maybe, floor level lights aimed up rather than something?
well, we can't aim lighting up in Kennebunkport. It has to aim down. It's against the lighting code to aim up.
Well, I
So,
meant even like, those ones you put along your.
yeah, these will be bollards. They'll identify where maybe an intersection is. So very, very low. We're looking at a couple different designs, but the whole property in general will be much darker than, we want it to feel like a residential lighting situation is what we're going for.
We'd like that too.
Yeah, exactly. But again, dawn to dusk, we're not having anyone out there at night. Also, remember, the market's not gonna be open at night, probably past 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at the latest. I'm not even imagining more coffee in the morning, so we're not gonna be encouraging people to be out there at night. Did I answer that? I know we didn't have a very good answer, but at least that's kind of the intention.
No, yes, thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, any more comments? Okay,
Haven't had to use that in a
we
while.
get the old microphone swap.
Battery hasn't been used in a year.
So, where are we?
Closing the public hearing? Pardon me? You closed the public hearing?
I was debating whether we close the public hearing or we
have been
confer,
continuing them,
or we continue it to the next meeting.
yeah.
What are we waiting for?
And that's the question, what are we waiting for?
I'll have the findings of facts by the next meeting. You have to decide whether you're gonna continue the public hearing.
I don't, if
So
we
if there's
have
new-
all the information we
There's
need
new
to
information, then
approve
we
the
should
thing,
continue it.
then,
We haven't asked for any new information to
Yeah.
be provided,
so,
so.
it would appear we're probably ready to approve the application. So I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, and
I'll
so,
make a motion to approve the application.
I'll second that.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So, we have approved your application for the North Campus.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very
And-
much. Very good.
So, now, the other applicant has been removed, so the only thing we have remaining is to read two findings of fact
Yep,
and get them signed.
yep.
And person.
in person.
In person.
It's a lot easier than.
This is
than-
fantastic.
I would sign one in a year.
Yeah,
That's
so,
right,
so whatever you do,
that's right.
put a, you know,
I do have,
I haven't signed
Oh.
one of these in a long time.
I do have one other item, just to discuss with the board. I brought it up briefly at the last meeting, you know, at the end, as everybody was, you know, vacating. But the Growth Planning Committee, we had talked a little bit about a joint meeting with
Well,
Growth
let-
Planning.
did we close the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had discussed a joint meeting with the Growth Planning Committee to talk a little bit about the future land use chapter for the comp plan.
Right.
And so they're wanting to have that meeting with you all, a joint meeting on the 17th, which would be a Tuesday.
Okay.
At this point, I'm assuming that's going to be a Zoom meeting. So,
Should be okay.
but I just wanted to get,
The
you know,
17th.
Yeah, that's a
Completely
Tuesday.
blank on my calendar, so.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have some indication ahead of time what they're going to be, wanting to discuss with us?
primarily, you know, they want your thoughts on future land use. You know, I think they're just interested in getting, you know, planning board's input, you know, relative to development that you've seen in town. You know, maybe some different thoughts and suggestions that may find their way into the comprehensive plan. You know, as the planning board winds up being the one that has to work through and administer a lot of, you know, the elements of the land use ordinance that get suggested through the comp plan. So I think they're looking for your feedback, you know, relative to what you've you know seen happen in town, and just, you know, get your thoughts, you know, get your thoughts on that. So.
So they've just had a forum where they got both through survey and then through a public meeting. So they've solicited input from the town.
Correct.
Do you think that might be available for us to look at ahead? Or
Sure.
is this,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's all in kind of draft format, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to, you know, send along to you just, you know, different, you know, some of the draft vision statements and things like that. You know, it's more, you know, tends to be more kind of high, you know, like, you know, conceptual, higher level,
Of course.
you know, thoughts. But, yeah, I'm happy. I can send some of
that
those
might help.
documents on to you.
smooth
Yep.
the meeting?
Sure.
Make it more useful.
Yep.
I have one other issue. On Ralph's other project here, we need to engage Amy to some extent. So what do we need to say at the meeting here to do that? Can I do something to
It's an
engage her? So that
Yeah,
she's-
I mean, technically, we would do that we would do that while the application was being discussed.
Okay,
you know,
so
is-
in other
is
words,
when that-
next time we
Is
can.
when that
we'll-
request, you know, would typically be made.
We'll
you know.
make that request the next time, because we
Yeah.
just got some.
I think in normal circumstances, I think you could just ask Ralph, but at, you know, in this point, I think I want to make sure that we were very clear
Sure.
in terms of the
Understood.
procedure.
So,
following
don't
our
be
procedures.
surprised.
And everything we're seeing is also going to Ralph?
That's correct,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, so-
Yeah,
Would any of those requests preempt a public hearing? I would postpone that based on their request?
well, no,
No,
Okay.
the way we're working, we can continue public hearings.
Okay, good enough.
right. Yep.
You have circulated some
I
questions.
just did some first cut, which, and this, I'm collecting first cut from the other members of
Yeah.
the board to put out at that meeting.
So,
The only thing we always request is when you send it to the requesting town attorney, you copy me. So
Of course,
when
Yep.
there's questions.
goes
Yep.
without
Mhm.
saying.
yeah, we're not at that, it's not at that stage yet, at this point. But yeah, once that's been formally requested, then, then we'll start doing that, so.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. So, we have two findings of fact. We have 210504, John and Jennifer Schaefer, Peterson Design Group, a site plan review, and Nina is the case manager, so proceed.
Kennebunk Planning Board site plan application of John and Jennifer Schaefer, 28 Wildwood Avenue, Kennebunkport, Maine. The application is dated May 10, 2021, for removal of existing building and replacement with a new residence. Following a site plan review pursuant to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance held on June 23, 2021, and a public hearing held on July 6, 2021, and continued on July 21, 2021, the Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings and conclusions and renders the following decision. Findings of fact. 1. The owners of the property and applicants are John and Jennifer Schaefer, who have an address at 23 Morton Street, Needham, Massachusetts, 02494. The property has a street address of 28 Wildwood Avenue, Kennebunkport, Maine, 04046, identified as Assessor's Tax Map 35, Block 1, Lot 12, on the municipal assessor's tax maps. The property is located in the Goose Rocks, Shoreland, and Resource Protection Zones. The property consists of approximately 5,996 square feet and is legally non-conforming and does not meet the setback requirements of LUO Article 4.17A, as it is completely in the shoreland zone and partially within the 75-foot setback from wetland. The applicants are represented by the Peterson Design Group with an office at 5 Nasons Court, Suite 5, Kennebunk, Maine, 04043. Hereinafter, the applicant have demonstrated a legal interest in the property by providing a copy of a deed of sale by personal representative dated December 30th, 2020, and recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds, Book 18510, pages 325 through 326. The applicants propose to replace an existing residence having an interior square footage of 1,514.36 square feet with a new residence having an interior square footage of 1,894 square feet, a 25% expansion while reducing lot coverage to 33.9%. The new residence will have an interior volume increase of 17%. The existing volume being 17,177.24 cubic feet to 20,111.4 cubic feet of the proposed new residence. The new residence slightly reduces the intrusion into the 75-foot setback and maintains the setbacks from the abutting properties and the street. The applicants have applied for approval from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, MDEP, permit by rule. The proposed finished floor elevation of the new structure will be lower than an elevation of 15.75 feet, which meets the requirement of being 2 feet higher than the proposed FEMA flood elevation of 13 feet. Any corresponding increase in roof height should be allowable as long as it falls under the town's description of maximum building height from the original 30 feet. The applicant has requested no submission waivers from the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. The applicant has requested no performance standard waivers from the requirement of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. Pursuant to the requirements of Article 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance, Guidelines for Decisions, the Planning Board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative ruling on one or more of the following identified findings which would otherwise compel denial. A, the proposed use meets the definition or specific requirements set forth in the Land Use Ordinance and will be in compliance with applicable state or federal laws. Finding yes. The proposed use will not create fire safety hazards and will provide adequate access to the site or to the buildings on the site for emergency vehicles. Finding yes. The proposed exterior lighting will not create hazards to motorists traveling on adjacent public streets and is adequate for the safety of occupants or users of the site and will not damage the value and diminish the usability of adjacent properties. Finding yes. The provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping provide for adequate protection to the neighboring properties from detrimental features of the development. Finding yes. The proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, fumes, vibrations, odor, dust, glare, or other cause. Finding yes. The provisions for vehicle loading and unloading and parking, and for vehicular and pedestrian circulation on the site and onto adjacent public streets will not create hazards to safety. Finding yes. A new crushed stone driveway for parking will replace old driveway. Oh, that's a note, sorry, note. The proposed use will not have a significant detrimental effect on the value of adjacent properties, nor has a significant detrimental effect which could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan. Finding yes. The design of the site will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage and is in conformance with applicable flood hazard protection requirements. Finding yes. Note, the proposed structure will have a poured concrete foundation with floodgates in the lowest floor, is in compliance with FEMA base flood elevation for its area. Adequate provision has been made for disposal of wastewater or solid waste and for the prevention of ground or surface water contamination. Finding yes. Adequate provision has been made to control erosion or sedimentation. Finding yes. Adequate provision has been made to handle stormwater runoff or other drainage problems on the site. Finding yes. The proposed water supply will meet the demands of the proposed use or for fire protection purposes. Finding yes. Adequate provision has been made for the transportation, storage, and disposal of hazardous substances and materials as defined by state law. Finding yes. The proposed use will not have an adverse impact on significant scenic vistas or significant wildlife habitat, nor will have such an impact that could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan. Finding yes. Note, the applicant will not use fertilizers or pesticides on this lot. Window screens and other design modifications are present to prevent against bird collisions with windows and doors. The proposed use will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion. Finding yes. Existing off-site ways and traffic facility can safely and conveniently accommodate the increased traffic generated by the development as far away from the development as the effects of development can be traced with reasonable accuracy. Finding not applicable. When a proposed development will be located within the shoreland and resource protection zones, in addition to the requirements of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, Article 10, the town-wide regulations in Article 6, the performance standards for specific activities and land uses in Article 7, approval of the development will also require that the board make positive findings based on the information presented that the proposed use will maintain safe and healthful conditions. Finding yes. Will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters. Finding yes. See 13 and above. Will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater. Finding yes. Will not have an adverse effect on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat. Finding yes. See 13 and above. Will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access to inland and coastal waters. Finding yes. Will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in the comprehensive plan. Finding not applicable. Will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use. Finding yes. Is in conformance with the performance standards set forth in section 5.6 of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance. Finding yes. Any negative finding by the board means the application has been denied. The application is otherwise complete. Conclusions. Article 1010A of the Land Use Ordinance mandates that the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more findings that would otherwise compel denial, and, as noted above, the board makes no such finding. The decision, the site plan application identified above is hereby approved. Conditions of approval, if any, pursuant to Article 10.11 and 10.12E The applicants pursuant to 1012E shall notify the planning board prior to the transfer of rights to construct an approved project. No assignment or transfer of rights to construct an approved project is valid without prior review and approval by the planning board. The applicants must record a copy of this decision and provide proof that such recordation is in a form copy, therefore attested by the Registry of Deeds, before any permits may issue or before any construction activity may commence. Approval of this application is dependent upon applicants receiving a valid permit from the MDEP prior to any construction. Copy of the permit must be filed with the Code Enforcement Office within 1 week of receipt. The applicants will not use fertilizers or pesticides on this lot. Precautions against bird collisions as described above will be maintained. The applicant will comply with all terms and conditions of the Town of Kennebunkport ordinances as well as MDEP approvals. Dated August 4th, 2021.
Very good. I have a motion to approve that.
So I just had one comment.
Of course you do.
Where you say following the site plan review pursuant to the land use ordinance held on June 23rd and public hearing held on July 6th, it should be July 7th? Shouldn't it be July 7th? Not the 6th?
Oh, July 6th.
I mean, I don't know if it makes that much difference, but it was on the 7th.
Yeah, the public hearing was the 7th.
Instead of the 6th.
I think so, yeah, because 6th is a Tuesday and the
6th is a
7th is the
Tuesday.
Wednesday.
All right.
I mean, I just,
Well, I will change that. Thought I had that right. I'm going to initial that.
all right, thank you. So I've moved to approve the finding of facts.
I second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that one is approved. The second one is 210502 Dow House Limited Partnership. Bradley Loud, authorized agent, and I will now read the findings of fact. And I'll sign that on the way past, just get. Finding of facts and decision, application of Dow House Limited Partnership, 26 Agamenticus Ave, Kennebunkport, Maine, to install a residential fixed pier on pilings which have existed at the site since the 1940s. Following a site plan review pursuant to the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance held on June 16th and continued on July 7th, and a public hearing held on July 21st, Kennebunkport Planning Board makes the following findings of fact and conclusions and renders the following decision subject to the enumerated conditions below. Findings of fact are as follows. The owner, applicant, is Dow House Family Limited Partnership, 45 Brackett Road, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Applicant is authorized Bradley Lown, same address as its representative. The street address of the property is 26 Agamenticus Ave, Kennebunkport, Maine. It's identified as map 30, block 3, lot 32 on the municipal tax assessor's map. Property is located in Cape Porpoise East, resource protection and shoreland zones. Owner has demonstrated legal interest in the property by providing a warranty deed dated January 3rd, 2020, recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds as Book 18-153, page 449 and 450. Property is legally non-conforming due to setbacks, consists of 0.69 acres more or less and a residential structure. An application dated May 7th, the applicant proposes to construct a 70-foot long, 4 feet wide pier oriented along a southeast axis away from the coast, connecting to a pier end at 4 feet long by 4 feet wide pier section oriented at the northeast axis on all pilings. Final configuration is a 70-foot long by 4 foot wide pier with an 8 foot long by 4 foot wide L at the end of the pier. The pilings are legally non-conforming and thus grandfathered since they can be shown to have existed before the adoption of the land use ordinance. Any required maintenance of them is not covered by this action of the board. It would be handled as required by separate building permit. B, connect fixed stairs off the L into the mud flap. 8, the proposed stairs and fixed pier are located outside of velocity zones as shown by a letter of map revision document from FEMA dated April 19th, 2021. This meets the 240-5.11.b1 requirements. The proposed stairs and fixed pier will be documented to not be located within a habitat of threatened or endangered species as mapped by the Department of Inland Fisheries, Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife as part of the Maine DEP permit. The MDEP permit shall be required prior to issuance of the building permit on this project. This meets paragraph 5.11.b.2 requirements. Proposed fixed stairs are to be provided in lieu of a seasonal float. They will measure approximately 3 feet wide by 11 feet long, extending at a 45-degree angle from the top of the pier to a supporting mud bottom 8 feet below. This provides a much less impact in the mud flat than the 200 square foot float. This meets 240-511B3 requirements. Handrails or guardrails may be installed on the stairs or elsewhere along the pier on locations where owner may deem them necessary. 11. Property has approximately 190 feet of shore footage. This meets 5.11B4 requirements. 12. The proposed access ramp, pier, and stairs will be located no closer than 25 feet from either northerly abutter or southerly abutter. This meets the 5.11B5 requirements. Proposed fixed pier will be a minimum of 1 foot above the ground as measured from the lowest point after the entrance ramp. Applicant has agreed to adjust the elevation of the bottom of the cross braces on the pilings to meet this requirement. Proposed deck boards will be no greater than 6 inches in width and spaced a ½ inch apart. This meets 5.11B6 requirements. Any reference to respective deck boards being spaced a ½ inch apart is interpreted as minimum spacing, not an exact spacing requirement. Proposed spares, ramp, and fixed pier will not interfere with an existing developed or natural beach area. This meets 5.11B7 requirements. Stairs, fixed pier, ramp will be 4 feet or less in width. This meets 5.11B9 requirements. The support pilings remain in a grandfathered configuration, with many of them being closer than the 10-foot requirement. No lighting is proposed on the project. 5.11B10 is not applicable. No structure is to be built on, over, or abutting the proposed stairs, pier, and ramp. So 5.11B11, B13, and B14 are not applicable. The proposed project is in tidal waters, so 5.11B12 is not applicable. 19, proposed ramp fixed stairs will be used for recreational purposes. This meets 5.11B17 requirements. Proposed ramp, fixed pier, stairs are not an enlargement, alteration, repair, or rebuilding of a non-conforming pier, driveway, ramp, or float. So 5.11B18 is not applicable. Proposed ramp, fixed pier, and stairs are approximate assembled length of 70 feet. This meets the B15 requirement. 22. Pursuant to requirements of Article 1010A in the Land Use Ordinance Guidelines for Decision, the Planning Board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes a negative ruling in one or more of the following identified findings which would otherwise compel denying. A. The proposed use meets the definition and specific requirements set forth in the Land Use Ordinance and will be in compliance with applicable state and federal law. Yet finding yes. Comment. The Maine Department of Environmental Protection permit must be granted before a building permit can be issued on this project. The applicant has agreed to adjust the bottom of the piling cross braces to be at least 1 foot above the ground. B. The proposed use will not create fire safety hazards. Finding NA. Proposed external lighting will not create hazards. Finding NA. D. Provisions for buffers and on-site landscaping provide for adequate protection of neighboring properties from detrimental features of the development. Finding yes. E. The proposed use does not have significant detrimental effect on the use, peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, vibrations, fume, odor, dust, glare, or other cause. Finding yes. F, the provisions of vehicular loading and unloading and parking for vehicle, etc., finding not applicable. The proposed use will not have significant detrimental effect to the value of adjacent properties, finding yes. Design will not result in significant flood hazard or flood damage, is conformance with applicable flood hazard protection requirements, finding yes. I, adequate provision has been made for disposal of wastewater or solid waste for the prevention of ground and surface water contamination, finding not applicable. Adequate provision has been made for control of erosion or sedimentation, not applicable. Comment, work is done on existing piling, so no disturbance of ground is envisioned. K, adequate provision has been made to handle stormwater runoff or other drainage problems on site, finding not applicable. Proposed water supply meets demands, finding not applicable. M, adequate provision has been made for transportation and safe disposal of hazardous substances, finding not applicable. N, proposed use will not have adverse impact on scenic vistas or significant wildlife habitat which could be avoided by reasonable modification of the plan. Yes, finding is yes. Comment, since the vertical support pilings are already in place, the addition of the pier on top is of negligible additional impact. Excuse me. O, the proposed use does not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion, finding NA. P, existing off-site ways and traffic facilities have no effect, finding NA. When a proposed development is located in a shoreland or resource protection zone, in addition to the requirements of Article 10 and Article 6, the performance standards of specific land uses of Article 7, approval of the development will require the board make positive findings based on the information presented to proposed use. That is pages stuck together. Here, excuse me.
Rats.
Okay, yeah. A, will maintain safe and healthy conditions, yes. Will not result in water pollution, erosion, yes. Will provide adequate disposal of wastewater, not applicable. Will not have adverse effect on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, bird, or other wildlife habitat, finding yes. Comment, final confirmation from MDEP of this needs to be provided prior to granting the building permit on this pier. E, will conserve shore cover and visual as well as actual points of access, yes. Will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in the comprehensive plan, finding not applicable. Will avoid problems with floodplain development and use, finding yes. H, is in conformance with the performance standards set forth in 5.6 erosion and sedimentation control of the land use ordinance, finding not applicable. Oh, crap. Any negative finding by the board means that the application has been denied, the application is otherwise complete. Conclusion, Article 10.10a of the Land Use Ordinance maintains the planning board shall approve a site plan application unless it makes one or more identified findings that could otherwise compel denial. As noted above, the board makes no such finding. Decision, the site plan identified above is approved. Conditions of approval. 1. The applicant pursuant to 10.12e shall notify planning board relative to prior to transfer of rights and construction of approved project. 2. The L at the end of the pier shall be no wider than 4 feet. The bottom of the cross braces and pilings shall be at least 1 foot above the ground. 4. Final approval of Maine Department of Environment Protection must be provided before a building permit can be issued on this project. 5. Applicant must record a copy of this decision and proof of recordation in York County Registry of Deeds before any permit may be issued or before construction activity may commence. 6. The applicant shall comply with all conditions of the town of Kennebunkport ordinance as well as Maine DEP and ACOE approvals dated August 4th.
Mr. I make a motion to approve these minutes as presented.
Minutes.
The finding of
Minutes.
fact.
Or findings of fact.
Oh,
Damn,
thank
I
you,
thought my big day.
I made one scribble here.
I saw that.
NA,
Did
yeah.
you make it on both of them?
Not
Okay,
yet.
so I'll second that motion to approve the
All
finding
in
of fact.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One more motion?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
okay.
And then I
Okay.
retire from my duties.